Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the June DAP. We have 3 items today, and we do have Damon and Brian Kelly out. For the record, we are recording the meeting. The format for the presentation today, or the meeting today, is a presentation by the applicant and then comments by the DAP. This is a sketch plan. It's the first presentation here before the DAP, 4861 Battery Lane. This project, it's kind of exciting that we're seeing other projects on Battery Lane. So this one is separate from the Battery Lane sketch plan that the DAP has seen many times by now, but this one is located on the north side of Battery Lane, just to the right or the east of 4901 Battery Lane, which the DAP saw a year ago. And so this is the first time the DAP has seen this presentation. They have met previously with staff, and we had given certain comments with concerns regarding the underway that's proposed, the massing along Battery Lane, as well as the design of the western facade that will face a through block connection that's on 4901 Battery Lane's property. And other than that, I think the applicant is requesting alternative compliance for the setback or the step back along Battery Lane. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the applicant for presentation.
Andrew Casso here, property owner, long-time property owner, but Fike, our architect, is really going to make a presentation. So
you're not going to say anything.
I'm not going to say anything. No, I'm going to say you've done a good job. You listened to them.
Great.
I think so.
Well, thank you. My name is Fike Tugberg. I'm an architect and planner with Architects Collaborative. We're an office out of Bethesda, Maryland. We've been there for more than 30 years. I'm excited to be here finally, after many years of being on again, off again with the Battery Lane project for us. We're finally at the sketch plan level. The presentation is in 2 parts because the requirements and the guidelines are so prescriptive that, as you've seen in the submittal, for the fear of neglecting any of the points, I'm going to go through these front part of the slides really quickly, and I can come back to any point. And then the second part is more on architecture and the planning of how these guidelines shape this building. John, can you get to the first one? And this is my associate, John Choke, without whom I would not be here. We always have a last minute excitement. Okay, so as Grace described, our site is basically 3 buildings west of Woodmont Battery Lane intersection. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this area of Battery Lane. I think you've seen this portion of Battery Lane is seeing a tremendous amount of development. Pretty much every building to our left and to our right and across the street is either in the process of submitting drawings, plans, or have already been approved. Our site is the series of lots. The first like 5, 6 lots are narrow and deep lots, and they sort of create narrow and deep buildings. But it's an ideal site in the sense that, one, the location is excellent. And the other thing is that to the north of the site, we have NIH, and it's a beautiful campus, although you cannot access it physically anymore as you wish. You can still have the views into that property forward as far as I can plan for. So our site is 2.1 acres approximately, and currently we have almost wall-to-wall coverage with building and asphalt. The property has 3 curb cuts, and they are meaningful to this project because, one, we're reducing the curb cuts. That is important for the pedestrian circulation and a pedestrian-friendly environment. And 2, anything we do from this point is a redevelopment, and we're basically replacing asphalt and built up areas with green, albeit part of it on structure, but nevertheless it's green. Next slide, please. Battery Lane District and Battery Lane stretches from basically Wisconsin Avenue to Old Georgetown Road, this portion of it. And it's shaped like an L. And there's actually a few large buildings that are in existence. It has always been a good place to live. I'm very familiar with this area. I have done buildings nearby. And we're located between two metro stops, which is a tremendous benefit. And to our north on the NIH campus is the Bethesda trolley trail. And then an additional trail that is being developed also in part by this project, going from Woodmont Avenue west and joining the trail. And another thing I'll note is that there's a really nice park just to our southwest of the property inside the quarter-mile circle, the smaller radius circle. Those are features of note. Next slide, please. Okay. Well, you see the boundaries of the Battery Lane District. And as I mentioned, properties to our east, starting on Wisconsin Avenue, that building has been there for a while now. And then there's the condominium at the intersection of Woodmont. And then the HOC building, I believe, is approved. And we're the ones in the pink brownish color. To our west is another 372 unit apartment building, also 12 stories. And further west, Alden Properties, and across the street, Alden Properties. We're going to change the name of the street to Alden Lane, I guess, when they build these things. So all of these are multifamily buildings that are proposed, exceptional, with the exception of the one that's all the way to the west, immediately adjacent to the NIH campus. All the other buildings are within the, near the Woodmont Avenue, are about 120 feet tall. The one tower, I believe, is 180 feet adjacent to the NIH. And then there's a tapering down to 90 feet as you sort of wind your way around to Old Georgetown Road. Thank you. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with the buildings, but they're all numbered and located on the site plan. The top three are Wisconsin Avenue, the one at the intersection, and then our current property. As you can see, it's not very exciting, but I guess it was apropos for its time. And like I said, it's 3-story, very simple brick buildings covering the property. And then moving on, I'm not going to touch upon all of the buildings, but the other ones are across the street. Very similar buildings, red brick, 2 and 3 or 4 stories, built around the same time. And I guess the same thing is happening now. So there's another run at development. And as I mentioned, all the ones in the pink are being in some degree of development, and the yellows have already been done so. And height going from 120 to 90. The building we're proposing is also 120 feet. So we fit right into that envelope to the building to our right, HOC building, and the other one to our left with the 372 unit apartment building. Next one, please. And we do, our architecture is, our intent is to do buildings that are not fashionable, but lasting, and that they don't date themselves quickly. All the buildings date themselves eventually. And there are some nice, crisp buildings, a lot of exciting buildings happening in and around Washington area, actually. I mean, there's been a tremendous change in the approach to these buildings, architecturally and planning wise, in the last 20 to 30 years, I would say. And we sort of broke out of our shell as the development came to this area more intensely. And these are some examples of massing changes, implying that the building is sort of grabbing a space and various colors without really going overboard. Bold and sort of rectilinear statements, really not difficult buildings to understand at a quick glance, yet they are sculptural and they manipulate the massing. And that's what we're after. So these are our aspirations in some ways. And the REI corner is a reference to a corner that we're planning on developing right by our lobby. And I will show you a drawing of that as we go through. I think the piece of art they put, I use that store and I like it because it's wood and it sort of is a purposeful and it's very appropriate. Anyway, next slide, please.
Were you the architect for the REI?
Yes. Oh, no, we're not the
Okay.
architects. I would like to have been, but.
Or Johnson Wax either.
Well, you have something against, sorry,
Yeah, I was just asking, nor were the architect for the Johnson Wax, right? You're not that
Well,
old.
the Johnson Wax, I put it there because, you know, that's a building that left its impression on me for many years. I'm not going to dwell on this, but we have a lobby treatment and a canopy treatment. And our vision, collective vision here was that sort of create those tall columnar tree-like elements that are so graceful, that are basically lifting up the space that you're in and just exaggerates the sort of grandeur of it in some ways. I think this one is really one of the more critical slides. And I don't know if you can read the numbers, but our sidewalk, I can't from here, but our sidewalk is 25 feet, basically from curb to the face of the building. That's our building line that we're respecting. The canopy protrudes into that for about 4 or 5 feet. And then we have tree wells or a strip of trees in a continuous tree well in order to continue this canopy requirement, which I think is a wonderful thing. And then we have the sidewalk, and then we have another planting strip in front of the building, only in part because we're trying to create really generous access into the lobby and onto our site. We want to be inviting. And one of the important things on the slide is setbacks and articulation. And as it is part of the guidelines, it is our intent to respect the datum line, set the building back as much as we can, but manipulate the massing in such a way that the pedestrian experience does not get confronted with a very tall facade. And then there's a series of articulation and treatments starting with the canopy. And then we have a very bold statement that wraps around the building that really stops your eye and establishes the building base. While it may not appear, next one, it may not appear in its face, we're still respecting our tripartite section or base, middle, and top, albeit we've done it in a different way.
Just to
Or would-
clarify, in case it wasn't what he's referring to there, pulling up her pages from the Bethesda downtown plan design guidelines that we look to follow.
I'm sure everybody's
Yeah.
very familiar with this, right? No? Sorry.
Well, there's some new blood on the DAP.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, pedestrian connection. I apologize. Some of these slides are repetitive, but I'm just going to touch up on something again, going back to the guidelines, so that everybody knows that we did not ignore it. In fact, we honored it and we provided more than adequate connections. The blue dashed lines you see are the trail connections going north and south up and down the drawing. And then at the top on the north side of the property along the NIH property, the requirement is that we're creating a trail starting from Woodmont Avenue and then connecting to the Bethesda trolley trail. So that's that segment you're seeing. And the building to our left already has committed to creating the North-South Trail. So we're embellishing that. Our intent is to create a respite and make that trail a little bit more interesting, pull part of it on our property. But as we all know, people take the most direct route. So unless somebody wants to take a break and have a cup of coffee or sit down and play on their phone, we will not get many bicyclists, but hopefully some of the walkers will stop by. And I will get into that later, but you can see our drop off. Next one, please, and I can talk about the vehicular circulation. So we have one means of access to the site for vehicles. We have many means of access for pedestrians. Everybody drives up from south to north from Battery Lane, and you see our drop-off circle, partially exposed, partially covered. I don't have to go through the benefits of having that kind of a drop-off, but we have so many deliveries, and we're gonna have 450 units, more or less, in 480,000 square feet. So we expect to have visitors, people coming in and out, delivery vehicles. And for those vehicles, we also created additional parallel parking on the drive. And the circular drop-off leads into our pedestrian access area. Our intent was to shape our lobby in such a way that almost half of our facade at the ground level is open physically to the pedestrians. We intend to bring them in. We're not hiding anything. We have a beautiful plaza. It's very green, very usable. Obviously, the project by its nature suggests and knows that it's a semi-public or a semi-private property, but we are certainly not discouraging people to be able to walk to the trail, etc. Just the opposite. And the rest of the area you see is a two-story lobby. I'm intending to get hopefully a 20 feet clear to the underside of the ceiling and all glass, much like this treatment with few mullions. So the whole facade on the side, starting from the facade facing west, the proposed other building, our neighbor, is going to be glass enclosed and then open. And we'd like people to be able to see our residents and visitors to also come in from Battery Lane as well as from drop-off. And our elevators lobby is immediately there going north on the building. On the right side, well, I'm showing units there. I'm not settled on that yet. There may be some more amenity spaces. There should be facing our park and our courtyard, but the rest will be units. To the top is the garage entrance all the way at the end of the driveway. Our site is sloping approximately 7 to 8 feet from the southwest corner down to the northeast corner. So that was the best place also to get the garage access quickly. You'll see in the building section, but basically we are covering wall-to-wall parking garage, 2 stories. All the cars are buried with the exception of the 3 parking spaces and whoever might be at the drop-off. Our loading dock is fully covered. It's very generous indeed. Hopefully the truckers will respect it and they will pull all the way in, and the trash people or the people who are picking up the trash, I apologize for that term. Anyway, then we have a separate elevator, trash room, etc. that is centered on the north side of the building. The plaza is supported on concrete deck. We've done this many times successfully, and we're carrying 45 feet of dirt in some areas, even taller because of the slope of the site, which really creates a very generous base for all the plants and the trees. Next one, please, John. Oh, it's on.
think the screen froze.
Oh, this may be it.
You've been cut off.
Just imagine, I will describe the building. So well.
There another adapter that could work.
Oh, this is the.
It's here.
If this doesn't work, the adapter.
If you have a meeting invitation, you could join and actually share your screen that way.
Should be some advertising or something. At this point. It's so great.
Or just make sure you mute your speaker so we don't get feedback.
I guess the biggest laptop I've ever seen in the.
I just noticed.
That's why, it's a little old. This one, I didn't. And then we have a new one, but apparently the adapter is not right, so.
Sorry. I know, it's not updated.
Is there a way we can get it through? Maybe.
Yeah.
you have-
Is it the same thing?
you have the
in-
I don't think
presentation,
we've changed anything. It should be the same.
not.
as the-
Okay.
you have the presentation, maybe.
Sent it on the evening of the 14th.
Kind of the TV.
How doing? Thank you.
I'm sorry, get down to,
Is this your computer?
yes,
Don't have some.
Okay. No problem.
where were we?
Service access, power separation, this one here.
Okay.
Right. The requirement is like 40 feet, 40 to 60 feet from adjacent properties. We're like 59 feet, 60 feet, depending on where you are, so we meet that requirement. But I mean, just in general information, we sort of provide that kind of setback regardless of where we are. We have some office standards, which is very close to 60 feet. Unless it's an exceptional site in a very dense area. Next one, please.
Sorry.
Is that you now?
Is that yours now?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So what am I doing? Is it you? Yeah. Grace, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good pinch hitting.
Full screen on there.
He will in just a second.
I'm great. That's great. Great. And there's green cover requirement, 35%. And it can be done either at grade or on roof treatments. And we're doing both. And we're meeting that requirement. Next one, please. Okay, so these are more meaningful to me architecturally. I've been talking about it anyway, but we've articulated the building pretty much on every facade. But not that one facade is more important than the other, but this is our public facade right on Battery Lane. And as you can see, we've established sort of a baseline with the canopy and kind of a bold protrusion of the massing. Actually, the rest of the building is set back. That protrusion is on the building line. And then above that, we have varying setbacks and massing and a variety of treatments and articulations. While it may not be meeting a verbatim 15-foot setback, which by the way is incredibly difficult in a residential building, the building articulation is really above and beyond to create an exciting facade and respecting the pedestrian and stopping the eye at the height of like 60, 70 feet as sort of desired and required. And you can see our lobby opening. This slide. Next one, please. Again, it's the base, middle, the same things I mentioned, just illustrated differently. The building base prominently displayed, that is the part that the pedestrians will be exposed to. Personally, I don't think these buildings are really that tall that we need to worry so much about it, but nevertheless, we're keeping that datum line along the whole facade that's being developed on Battery Lane, and that we are respecting verbatim. So, and then we have some elements that embellish the building, again, base, middle, and top, and we have a decorative and purposeful element, a trellis that sort of signifies the amenity spaces on the roof, sort of leads you, comes around the side of the building along the whole west side. Next one, please. This is what I've been talking about, compatibility. You can see the baselines of the HOC building and the other one to our west. We're within the same range. We're stepping our building back at various locations and perhaps even more articulation, building on the left side a little bit. Not that we're racing them, but our building looks better that way, we think. Next one. You didn't freeze it. You're killing me. Okay, all right. Is it safe? Yeah. All right, here we are. We're finally at the building massing. I mean, you can see that our building height-wise, bulk-wise, fits very well with the proposed and approved developments, buildings to our east and to our west. And as I mentioned, the building base wraps all the way to the west side. We have that public access along that side, the pathway going from Battery Lane to the NIH. And we want to make sure that facade is also very inviting and active. And our courtyard is facing east, the HOC building. Partially, we like that exposure better, and it worked out better for the planning of the building. And partially, the building to our west already creates some plazas, etc. And while they split their open space into two pieces, we elected to sort of put it in one place where we can create a larger piece of green and a courtyard and an activity area. Next one, please. Okay. We also feel that the NIH view is important. There is no back to this building, really. And our articulation and building mass variation continues to that. You can see the trellis, and the trellis is attaching to our amenity penthouse, where we have social room, fitness room, and our rooftop pool, bathhouse as needed, etc. And then the opposite, the northern wing, is a green roof. Next one, please. Okay, first floor, I've already talked about this. I don't want to beat it to death, but our lobby is wide open and the building pulls back to invite the passerby inwards towards the courtyard. We talked about the pads, etc. Next one, please. Okay, so this is, for me, one of the more important slides because it really says what we're trying to accomplish on Battery Lane. I think this is an exciting building from my perspective. I hope you feel the same way. You can see how open our first floor and lobby is, and there's a hint of a sculpture. It is just a place keeper and we intend to incorporate some public art into that space. I really like the space. I think if you're waiting or you're sitting around doing some kind of an activity, or you're a passerby, while we do not have any kind of a requirement of these through block connections as in elsewhere in CBD, I'm familiar with it, and I think those are great spaces, and I'm trying to generate in part a space like that where one can hang out and while you're waiting for somebody, your Uber, whoever, or your friend, have a pleasant space and be open to everybody passing by. Next one, please. These are really floor plans going up. You can see the building step backs and articulation. The slide to the left is the second floor, which is the lobby being open, which I already mentioned, and the loading dock requires additional height. Next one, please. Keep going through these. It's just a residential building, other than the setbacks and step backs. It's all units. We intend to provide studios, small one bedrooms, regular one bedrooms, one bedroom dens, two bedroom units, a variety of them. And we're going to have 15% MPDUs. So that's a large contribution to the affordable housing stock. And we have a parking ratio. We're aiming for a 1-to-1. As I mentioned, it's 2 stories of garage. We're basically going to the east property line and the west property line. Next one, please. I've talked about the building section. You can see in heavy grade, the amount of dirt that our plaza slab will carry in order to support the vegetation above it. The lobby on the left side, loading dock on the right side of the transverse section. And the other one shows the plaza, etc. You have a landscape slide. Yeah, these are really landscape slides. It's a concept in development, but we're going to have some. There's really no game playing or anything that I see here. Maybe bocce or some minor things, but it's a kind of a varied space. It's a very large open space, and it's facing east, and it is deep enough that it will also get midday sun until the sun, depending on the time of year, sort of crosses over west and gets clipped by the edge of the penthouse, and then the shadow will cover it sort of left to right on the slide. With that, that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. I apologize for the glitches. I'm not holding him responsible. Thank you for feeling us out. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, I will start. I very much appreciate the shape of the building, C shape, to give a much larger green space. When I first was reviewing the drawings, and I'm glad to see some additional slides that you show specifically for the rendering. My initial reaction was to turn the building the other side and create a bigger space between the two solids, right? So that the open space is larger, but I can see why you have done what you have done with the topography and the loading area and the service and
Exactly.
parking, where it drops down 7 to 8 feet. So that completely makes sense. I'm very much appreciative of cutting down the 3 curb cuts to 1. We want to see more uninterrupted pedestrian walkways, and this does that. You do have 2 connections to the trail, right? The one that you
Correct.
share with
East and west side.
and the second one. So I would say the second one is a little bit questionable because you are crossing over the driveway, but it's still nice to have that secondary path.
I think that's a great point. What I was thinking is that we're going to generate our own bicycle traffic and walking traffic, people coming out of the lobby.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure they have a reasonably safe way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That secondary path, I see probably for the residents, for the tenants who will occupy the building. I run on the trail in Bethesda times a week. And so I would probably run on the one that is on the west
More
side,
direct,
right?
right.
And I very much like seeing the landscaped area along that path, so it's a little bit more shade. So that's wonderful. Even if you didn't have that secondary path, I think you're still okay because you're articulating with landscaping that path, the path on the west. I do have a question about balconies. So you mentioned setbacks, and I see that you are compliant with all the setbacks. They're more than the minimum. The important one, I would say, probably the one public space on Battery Lane from curb
Right.
to facade.
Battery.
So you're allowed to do 20 to 25. You have 25 max, so that's great. And the space in between the building massing on the left, on the right, or west and east, they're also over the minimums. So that's a nice spacing for breathing room between the buildings. But when I saw massing, that first setback over the first, I believe 6 stories, right? That where you go 6 feet in and then it pulls out a couple of feet out. So it's actually a 4-foot setback. Yes, it's a tiny one. And I hear your point about having a 15-foot setback for residential buildings being very difficult. The difficulty has to do with probably offsetting the stair, and that's
Columns,
all kinds of gymnastics
cantilevers
there.
and columns.
Right. So I hear that. My question is about balconies, right? So then that's why I was happy to see that rendering. So I see there's a lot more balconies being planned.
Right.
And I was wondering if the balconies were within that 4 to 6 setback, or they were going to project out.
Some of them are within, but there will be some balconies as we develop, not on the front facade, but on the side facade, on the upper floors, we might have some balconies because some balconies are really beneficial. Some people prefer to have them. But our intent is really put the balconies as shown on that sketch in that sort of the bold area so that it is not overly overbearing and also speaks to the street, sort of have eyes to the street. But about that, I didn't contemplate other than the vertical row of balconies
Yeah.
that you
that's a
can
helpful
sort of see, which is kind of a stitching of the massing, really. And, we may have additional balconies above, but I didn't consider it perhaps a little too brutal. I'm not sure. So
My concern was really just that those balconies do not project into the setback that you've shown us.
no, I didn't
They
intend.
do not. And I see that there are internal balconies, the ones that are enclosed on 3 sides, really on the second through 6th floor, and then that 6-foot setback.
Correct.
So I'm glad to see that. Another, why I'm talking about the balconies is since pandemic, many people want more outdoor space, whether it's terraces on the ground, elevated courtyards, or balconies, and percentage of outdoor space amongst different projects planned within the DMV area have increased, I would say, from previously pre-pandemic 35 to even 60% for some developers. So do you have any idea of falling for outdoor space?
In terms of providing balconies for the units?
Yeah, outdoor space for our units. So you have 453 dwelling units here. Just out of curiosity.
I really don't know. I apologize, but you're absolutely right about the increase in balconies. We went through maybe 30 years of a span where the developers started seeing balconies as nuisance and on sort of profitable space.
Yeah.
Rather sort of put the space in between. So the balconies shrunk to like French balcony, that kind.
Yeah.
But it is coming back. Again, we're being requested to incorporate. And especially on the west side, on the east side of the building, we intend to provide balconies.
Okay.
But I tell you what else we intend to provide that I didn't get into because it wasn't part of the discussion is that we've developed unit types where almost every unit has a small or mid-size study area, studio, that can be used for multi-purpose. Not necessarily a bedroom, but an office or a child's sort of a space, so that in response to the COVID pandemic, everybody felt that, they needed more space. And I believe that's appropriate for these type of communities. I think it makes these buildings more attractive to provide them. And also, we intend to provide additional public space where people can, hang out, do their work. They were fashionable at one point, and they sort of disappeared because of various reasons, security reasons, that kind of stuff. But I think it can be rejuvenated so that people can have hangouts. And our lobbies are becoming larger to accommodate that, which is what I'm intending to do. And it also responds in part to the security issue.
Makes sense. Do you guys plan any renewable source of energy for this project? I see a lot of green roofs, so you are at that requirement at 35%. Any kind of solar panels?
Not so far. The roof is,
I see
might
there's
be covered.
limited space there, yeah.
so, we're going to be forced to use these VRF mechanical systems because there's very little roof space left.
Yeah, you need a DOAS and you need
Exactly.
40
Exactly.
to
And then we have the
42.
amenity
Yeah.
strip sitting there. So it's a challenge, but we've done it. And unfortunately, I don't think there is room for solar.
Okay.
I will keep asking, but we'll see.
I have a couple of just
Sure.
questions that maybe we can get some answers on. What is the dimension at the back from the pinch point of your building to the back property line?
Okay.
It seems very, very, very narrow. That's why I'm asking.
Why don't you go to the first?
Left, this line, dash line is. So I guess the pinch point is
25 feet.
25.
And then that elevation goes all the way up 120 feet at that point?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that trail is an important trail, in the master plan for this area. And it's very, very tight, particularly with the mass of that building being right up next to it like that. And so, I mean, that's a concern that I don't.
I hear you, but there is one point, not that I'm arguing. NIH campus is just forever green. So the trail is really wide open to the side.
Yep.
Yeah, and keep in mind, as Julia mentioned, the Bethesda trolley trail that basically runs east and west out to Wisconsin Avenue and over to Georgetown Road is really a bicycle highway, if you will, by comparison. And I did go out to the site and I looked. The combination of the buildings that are built further to our east and their location and what appears to be forest and maybe even Stream Valley, I'm not sure a path will ever be able to connect through to Old George or to Woodmont Avenue from here.
So rather than take that approach, I would suggest looking at the building to your west and matching there. We spent a lot of time with that project, making sure there was enough room and looking at the design. So I think you're going to get the same thing when you submit at DRC. So I would start looking at that dimension that the project to your west did and figure out how to make that work.
Okay.
The other setbacks that I want to talk about a little bit more, the step back on the front. You said that it's difficult structurally to do, or it's difficult to
I'm not
construct.
trying to give you any.
No, but my point is that every project in all of Bethesda coming to this group has stated that. And every project so far has been, or not every project, but many projects were pretty much verbally abused by our previous board because these setbacks were not adhered to that were required or that were asked for in the guidelines. And so there are some projects that have not done the full setback, and they've had an explanation for doing that. Eventually they were approved. Project to your west has some good step backs in their design. And so I'm wondering, you know, you're going back, you're stepping back, but then right above that floor that steps back, you're projecting out again. And I think aesthetically, I'm looking at it and the elevation, and I think it's intriguing, but it's not meeting the guidelines. And so I think you need to have a very, very cohesive and strong argument for why you're not doing it. And it can't just be that it's difficult to build,
No,
because
I was just
everybody's
sharing-
had that
I
difficulty.
was sharing a bit of information, having worked on these buildings. I'm not using it as an excuse.
Well, so anyway, I think you gotta have, I think you have to have a reason for doing that. And because it's not just this group that evaluates this and staff, but it's our board. And our board is, you know, they read the guidelines and well, the guidelines say this. And that's how they evaluate these projects. And so I think that's an important element.
And before police that, I mean, I think one of the things that's in the submission requirements is to show what your building would look like if you met the guidelines. I didn't see that here, so I think in addition to coming up with a verbal description, I think showing what, if you met the guideline, what that would do to your project, I think would also be an essential part of explaining why.
Okay, thanks for
that's
the
a good-
suggestions. Yeah, okay.
The other thing that just kind of hit me over the head, frankly, where are the points? Where are you getting your points, your major points for this? Because typically, minimal parking is always something that these projects go after. And if you're doing 1-to-1, I think that is, am I wrong? Isn't that very, very high for most of the projects that we've been reviewing here?
I mean, most of the projects that we see are closer to the metro. I don't know how many, so look at Grace, so Grace has been out, so I can't look. But 1-to-1 is high for Bethesda projects. We can see closer to 1-to-1. So, I mean, I think the question in terms of your points, I don't know where you're looking individually with that.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I
Ian?
think we're in the 130 range, is my recollection. We are generating minimal parking, structured parking, design excellence, through block connection. Yeah, we're making work for sure.
But right now, I do recall it's over 100 and more than and we meet the number of categories, but we can look at that.
Yeah,
actually.
it's just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely have 4 categories and we're
Yeah.
well over 100.
yeah, I was just thinking that it seems like it's a lot of parking.
Okay.
I mean,
And you say you've been seeing 0.75 as the ratio?
I mean, up here, we've had a lot of projects on other lane. I don't know, but I think closer to the metro for this area.
Okay,
Yeah, 4901, I just did the math, is like 0.8.
0.8, okay.
And what is the percentage of electrical charging stations?
I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
There's a zoning ordinance requirement.
I thought maybe they plan to exceed.
There's a requirement, but what we plan to do is we will definitely meet every jurisdiction. But in our practice, we provide additional wiring to future spaces that can be created without much hassle.
Yeah, I was more interested in seeing if that requirement was being exceeded.
that's just information I needed. I have other comments, but I'll let everybody else go.
Yeah, I first off, completely agree with what Paul's bringing up about the setback issue. This has been a issue on, I think, every single project we've looked at. So I think greater attention as to meeting that requirement is important. I think one of the things that I thought was peculiar when I looked at the submission, but now that I see your rendering, I'm beginning to understand it a bit better, is, let's call it the balcony or the plate that's above the lobby. And your submission seemed really peculiar to me. I understand it more
It's not a
and better.
balcony, it's a
Well,
canopy.
that's what I read it as. I read it as a balcony and I realize it's a canopy. But it still seems, if you're going to pursue it, very heavy to me, and it could be a lot later. So that's a kind of a design comment that probably doesn't belong in this discussion right now. I think the bigger issue is really talking about the western side and the length of it and how it's articulated. Are the units accessible to that trail? I realize there's a significant drop in grade, but I don't think there's been any discussion at all really about the
Into the ground level units.
Yes, yeah,
There is a grade differential.
I realize that.
It tapers, comes closer when you, as you're headed to the north side. So the actual, our building drawings indicate patios with short retaining walls. And then they eventually diminish and become just patios open to the trails.
That's right. Okay. To help activate that. I think one of the issues ultimately, as you go to the next stage, is really what is that articulation of that western facade? Because it is a very long facade. I mean, how many hundreds of feet is that? And there's really been really very little discussion, at least in this session, about it.
Okay.
Looks like close to 300, something like that.
No,
What's the facade?
I don't think it's.
380, give or take. That's the length of the property.
Recent building. It's almost identical.
Paul, did you say you had other comments too? or-
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry.
We only have a couple minutes.
I have a few actually. And first one, I'm a newbie, so if I put my foot in it, please tell me. Couldn't we be talking with people in the West and share that drive? Because that two pedestrian connections, two garage connections, two drop-offs, two curb cut. If the plan were flipped, you could find a way to share that drive with the project left west, would, I think, improve this problem for now. Might give you more GLA too. Now, that means you have to talk to them. I don't know if they're friends or enemies. But if that could be done cooperatively,
They are
I think it could certainly benefit your project and probably theirs too.
There is a good relationship between them. They're both long-term property owners there, but there are challenges in sharing a driveway due to costs of maintenance and operation, and all that stuff, yeah.
It's hard enough with a single family,
Yeah.
but considering the potential benefits to both projects
Uh-huh.
and the urban design benefits for Battery Lane. These are now being treated like houses, and one would think that in downtown, there's a more cohesive the buildings in the single family subdivision. So that's something I would love to see. Given that, I'm looking at the size of the drop off. I'm wondering why the drop off was this, given the much smaller size building. I also think that even if the project stays the way it is, the idea of having parallel parking along the north-south drive to the loading is, I don't get it at all. I, along with a lot of other people, have been reading Henry Gavar's book, and making parking making parking a selling point, something side.
I'm trying to understand
Well,
the comment. I'm sorry.
you've got 4 parking spaces along the drive adjacent to the park, and I don't understand why they're necessary.
Well, there are 450 units
Got it.
with Amazon purchases.
They're not really parking
Yeah.
spaces, they're
Yeah.
delivery spaces,
Yeah,
if you will.
delivery
And
spaces.
for whatever reason, the buildings to the west is not showing those.
Well, they don't have the experience that we do. I mean,
So
Right.
what you're saying is that in this location, it is a benefit to the tenants to have them parked there rather than on Battery Lane.
And Battery Lane, where vehicles would be immediately pulling next to the bicycle lanes, et cetera. I mean, we're getting them all off of that, and part of the drop-off serves that purpose. We've been working on these buildings for a long, long time.
As have we.
The drop-offs and potential residents, it's important to provide some space for them.
It's important for them to receive their packages, whether they receive them from the truck that is on their property or adjacent to their property. If it would prevent them from receiving packages, that would be a problem. And I understand, I thought that given that, why there have to be 4, or and maybe more than that, considering and the turnaround, I don't get it.
Okay.
As a developer, I'm a good landscape architect. So I'm not questioning your financial reasons for doing it. But I guess that goes back to setback as well. Step back. What you really, I mean, there may be some structural gymnastics done, but what you really use is GLA. So is that then a problem that money can solve? And it's simply money you don't spend by removing.
So just, so we're about to run out of time, and so just that we give them guidance. In terms of the relationship between the circle and the open space, is it the fact of it, or is it the
amount of area devoted to it?
So.
Yeah, that was my other.
As a design comment for next time, I think if you look maybe at how to make this less A and B and more like to make the relationship a little closer, a little less distinct.
And I understand your emphasis on the size of park space, but the balance between pavement and non-pavement is way down some side.
Yeah,
On the entire east side of the building.
that was my other comment
Okay.
that I hadn't made yet, but I think that
I think
that drop off is
I
very
think
large, and
part of
one of
it
the, does anybody else have an issue with the fact that they're doing this very substantial breezeway in this climate that basically pulls that driveway circle towards the street, makes it, more part of the fronting street than not? Rather than that being lobby that goes out there, it's this breezeway, and it seems just awfully, in my opinion, awfully cramped, and in this climate, maybe a little bit problematic most of the year.
You brought up the depth of structure in that area. And I think that if that structure were like, that would,
What I find
and you looked at
What I find intriguing about it, though, is the way it opens up to Battery Lane. I think that's kind of nice, actually. Now, do you need all that asphalt and all that circulation space to accomplish the same thing? I think that's the more fundamental
that
question.
can be debated. I think part of it is the graphics that are.
I was gonna say, you
Showing
have
the-
bigger ground on
Right.
left side, and if you
Yeah.
came back with another image rendered in a
Yeah,
certain
this,
way.
this doesn't flatter it.
You know, sidewalk is rendered as the same as the drop off
Yeah,
here, so
right.
drop off is not.
I would take a look also at the soffit treatment.
Soffit treatment?
Uh, That might.
Those are issues that we'll deal with as
Okay.
we go through.
Okay.
Will
Yeah,
All right.
Right now, it looks a little bit more monumental, heavy, but that was comment.
I'm aware.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you
Paul,
for
if you have others that you didn't get out, you just send them to us and we'll. Okay.
So this is sketch plan. I just want to look at the DAP. Is this something that you'd like to see again before it moving forward to site plan? Taking in consideration the comments today?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your thoughts.
And if there are extra comments from the panel, send them to Grace. And then Grace will include them in the summary that goes with this.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.